Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi, I'm Josh Brum. This is a brand new podcast, and its focus is and same as the name, Beyond Emissions. And I don't even have any Star Trek music or anything. Maybe I should add some of that in. I'm a Trekkie, right? No, Beyond Emissions. The focus of this program is, we have a dream. Simon Sinek talks about I have a dream, Martin Luther King, and it's a dream that we may never actually achieve fully, but we're striving towards that goal and striving that dream could come true someday. And that is what Beyond Emissions is all about. It is a dream. It is a dream I have since I was a kid, going camping with my dad in the Sierra Nevada mountains and driving up at the top of the first foothill as you're going up to the mountains to go camping back in the 1980s. And my dad and I would look down there as he'd flick his cigarette out the window, and he'd go, "Son," he'd go, I would just love it. Look down there. And what I'm referring to is the layer of smog that covered the entire valley. It was disgusting. And he goes, "Son, I would love it if you could have something to do with cleaning that up someday." And it stuck with me my whole life. And I've been in the battery energy storage, renewable energy business now for over 16 years, going on my 17th year in my career. I've been broadcasting since 1996. And I thought, you know what? Let's combine all that knowledge, that passion, that dream, that challenge that my dad gave me when I was a teenager to do something about cleaning all that up. And, all too often, we hear it, the buzzwords of zero emissions, emissions-free future. And I said, you know what? How about beyond emissions? What does it look like when emissions are gone? What does that look like? How does that benefit our society? How does that benefit my son and my future grandchildren, right? How does that benefit us as human beings and as people? Will it lead to more peace or more war? Will it lead to poverty or riches and a better economy for everybody and more opportunity? I happen to think the latter, more opportunity. I happen to think that an emissions-free future or beyond emissions is going to be a wonderful place to live. Imagine, in order to reach that goal, we have to have plenty of energy for everyone and have it be cost effective or unlimited, if you will. I know there's so many different avenues that scientists are going down. There's breakthroughs and technologies that exist right now or in their infancy in becoming something, realistic as far as achieving the goal of beyond emissions. Fusion. There's so many things, space-based solar, gravity storage, energy storage in other ways than just chemical. There's so many different things, solar, wind, hydro, you name it. I saw a blowhole the other day, an experiment that's being done, just a big giant barge that's made out of cement with a blowhole, and it's producing like a megawatt of power or something. There are technologies that are going to take us there. And what does that look like? What does that look like? And that's what Beyond Emissions is all about. And of course, education along the way. We love learning. I love learning. So I hope you don't mind joining me as far as that's concerned. We'll have experts from around the world that will be on our program Beyond Emissions regularly. And most of the time, I might have someone who has a different point of view from time to time. This isn't a cantankerous program. We don't want to spend the whole time arguing with people who disagree, but at the same time, we do want to show you all points of view. So there may be some guests from time to time that have a different point of view. But for the most part, the folks that I have on this program are already knee deep in this dream. The momentum is moving forward and they're on the wave. They're riding the wave towards the beach. Right there. We have the potential to get there. It's right there. Unlimited energy, clean energy, Beyond Emissions. That's what the program's all about. So I'm so thankful that you've joined us. Buckle in. We're going to learn a lot today with my very first guest. And by the way, I was a skull full of mush. Okay. I did not know anything about energy, about power, about the business I was in when I met this fella and still am in, energy storage and batteries. I didn't know anything about energy storage or batteries or the basics of Ohm's law or any of that. I was a DJ that got into the battery business, And this guy who's my very first guest, not only have I learned so much from him in the last 16, 17 years working together on different projects and different markets, etc. I've learned so much from him along the way, but at the very beginning when my skull was just full of mush and I was there in that training room and all of a sudden this guy comes in, young fella, Jeremy Cordray. And this gentleman just, oh, wow, opened my eyes that, wow, knowledge really is the key. I just didn't know, right? I was ignorant. I thought I knew, but I didn't. Thank you, Jeremy Cordray, my first guest on the program. Welcome to Beyond Emissions. Thank you for filling this skull full of mush with so much knowledge. I really appreciate just your mentorship over the years. And I know that you share the same dream of what this world will look like beyond emissions, right? Welcome to the show.
Hey, Josh. Thanks for having me. I'm so honored to be on for your first episode here. And you're 100% right. Whenever I walked into that training room years ago, had no clue that we would spend our careers working with each other here and there, everywhere, talking about so many different things. But you're right. Whenever we talk about emissions and beyond emissions, I love the title of this show. There's so much potential. You hit the nail on the head. So much potential in beyond emissions. And so excited to talk about it. Where do you want to get started?
Well, the first thing is, in your opinion, I know you share the dream. Okay, you're working in an industry that's moving that forward. I see awesome posts all the time where you're talking about big commercial truck fleets that are switching over to zero emissions vehicles, whether they be all electric or hybrid, or utilizing fuel cell technology with hydrogen. I mean, there's lots of different moving parts there. And it may require several different pieces coming together to make this work, obviously. It's not a one-size-fits-all. There's not going to be one savior coming out of nowhere that's going to take care of everything. I think it's going to be a diverse approach. But, you're currently, on the path, and you believe in the mission of Beyond Emissions. You believe in the dream. So obviously, Beyond Emissions creates a question for all of us. What do we see beyond emissions? What does our world look like when there are zero emissions someday?
I think it looks like a world that's efficient. From thousands of years ago, right? We've been figuring out better ways of doing things. The Industrial Revolution was a better way of learning to manufacture things. The Internet Revolution in the late 90s and early 2000s was a better way of working with data. We're about ready to enter, and I use this hashtag all the time in my posts. We're in an energy revolution right now. We're finding new and more efficient ways of utilizing energy. I couldn't do a show, Josh, and not, or speak for that matter, and not say the words. We have the same amount of energy today that we had 2,000 years ago. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only transfer forms. We're getting better on how we're letting energy transfer forms so that we can utilize that energy in our everyday lives. And that's the whole key, because emissions are just the discharge when we're taking energy and transferring forms and having it be utilized for something that we're trying to do. The emissions are just a byproduct, a discharge of us doing that. And as we reduce our emissions, so to speak, we're reducing that discharge, we're increasing our efficiency, and that's what the world looks like beyond emissions, is when we're being so efficient with the energy that we're utilizing in this world that we are going back to a more perfect utilization of the resources that we've been given here on this planet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like balance, right? Balance, more balance. Isn't that true that, it's energy is always seeking equilibrium, basically?
Yeah, I mean, it's a sum zero equation with energy, meaning that energy is part of this world, right? And so we're utilizing, but as we transfer forms and we take energy and we utilize it, whether it's the burning of coal to create electricity, whether it's a nuclear reaction to create electricity, whether it is a solar panel catching light energy, radiation energy, and forming electricity, whether we're burning diesel or gasoline to turn the pistons in our vehicle. No matter what it is, we're trading one thing for another, and there's a byproduct. That byproduct has to be added in to what we're getting out of it. So our miles per gallon that we do is a great way that we are utilizing this a calculation, a sum zero equation on our amount of discharge, our amount of energy or emissions that we're sending off whenever we want to take a vehicle and go, X amount of distance. We need to burn fuel, or gasoline or diesel or some type of fuel to get to that point. That's why we're able to do a calculation of MPGs even on hybrids and electric vehicles, a different calculation. It's really an energy calculation. And that energy calculation, in this case, the higher distance that you can go on the same amount of fuel means more efficiency, means less emissions.
Right, right. And we focus so much on the environment, which is a part of the equation. Like the dream that my dad challenged me to start to have. And now here we are, both of us living this dream to make it happen beyond emissions, a zero emissions world, a more efficient world, and not having to look down and see all that smog, that nasty smog. That's the byproduct that he's talking about, folks. Just to kind of circle back. My dad told me that story, but my grandma told me the story as well. We live over in the Central California, San Joaquin Valley, looking up at the beautiful Sierra Nevada mountains, right? And gorgeous. I mean, right now, we only see them a few times a year after a big rainfall. Other than that, they're pretty much in a big haze and we can barely see them. And so it still has not been solved, even though we've made improvements since my dad pointed down at the nastiness in the valley that, all those years ago. My grandmother, my dad's mom, she told me, and my dad corroborated this. He said that they would all go up at the top of their roof in Hanford, California, and just look at the mountains all year long. And it looked like it was like right there on a postcard in front of your face. And they're not at the base of the mountain. You know what I'm saying? They're a couple hundred miles from, or 100 something miles from the mountain. And they're literally looking at this mountain and seeing it like in perfect colors, just gorgeous. So could you imagine? Oh, actually you can imagine it. Folks, by the way, Jeremy Cordray, friend of the program, friend for a long time, mentor, and fellow journeyman in the dream of beyond emissions on the program with us today. We can look back And we can see when that wasn't an issue. We can look up and we can see how beautiful it was. And you do remember, listeners, you remember, I remember, Jeremy, when we had the lockdown, when everybody was in their house and there were no cars on the streets. It was the weirdest thing in the world. It was creepy. But we were outside, my wife and I, and oh my gosh, the birds were singing, the sky was blue, and all I'm saying is I don't want to lock anyone down, but I'm saying that beyond emissions, could you imagine a world where we're all living life and enjoying life, but we have that benefit? So without being locked down, I mean, does that make sense? Am I crazy for bringing that up? Because I noticed when we were all locked down, everything seemed to get more beautiful. Am I nuts?
You're not nuts at all. And Josh, I'm going to challenge you to go beyond emissions. Think about light pollution. I moved from Chicago in March of 2020 when the whole world shut down. I moved from Chicago down to the Ozark Mountains in southwest Missouri, right along the Arkansas line. And I will tell you, after living 20 years in Chicago, looking up at the night sky, living down here in the Ozark Mountains, where at night it gets very, very dark, to see the sky, the way it looks from here in the Ozark Mountains versus the way I would look up from my backyard in Chicago. Light pollution, the emitting of that light, it's a totally different world. I tell you, and I bring that up because, you know, as you were talking, you made me think about that big difference and moving away from the need to have everything lit up all the time. And you imagine, you know, from outer space and looking at the United States at night, and you see all the lights around the major cities, New York, Chicago, LA, all these cities, and you see all that light that we're putting out there. One, I immediately think of the things that you can't see because our eyes can't take in more light than what's near us. But then I think about all the energy and the efficiency of utilizing that energy to create the electricity to power all those lights. And it just makes me think about, not only are we not being fully efficient in creating the electricity to power those lights, but what are those lights doing that we're not able to see the beauty of the sky at night, and with light pollution and that type of thing. You made me think of that, Josh, as you were going through that.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Speaking of that, when we camp, you know, I love seeing all the stars. Yeah, it's something that we're used to not seeing, and so it surprises us. But it's bigger than we could even imagine. Like how many Earths would fit into Jupiter? Like literally, we don't realize how little we are until we see all that. The new James Webb telescope, I think they're having some issues with it, but oh my gosh, some of the pictures this thing is sending back is just amazing, right?
Yeah, it's phenomenal, and been very fortunate. You know, I work at Enersys, and we built the lithium NMC batteries on that James Webb telescope, and so gotten to watch as that has been. It wasn't an easy feat, you know, going from the technology that was put up in, I believe it was the 70s or 80s. I think it was in the 80s when we put up the previous telescope, and to go into this James Webb telescope, you know, the clarity, the images, the detail, and we're just scratching the surface, right? For these pictures that are coming back. I feel like every week or two we're getting new pictures coming out. I'm getting my Google notification saying, go look at these pictures. I just get excited every time because of the clarity and the beauty that those pictures entail.
And, you know, we're talking about the environment. We're talking about cleaning up all the smog and the nastiness, people not having as many breathing problems, better health. We're talking about light pollution. This is all the results. We're talking about our dream, man. This is what the show is called, Beyond Emissions. What does our world look like? And obviously juxtaposed to what it looks like now, what could it look like, right? That's where the discussion is headed. Well, what are some of the other benefits of going beyond emissions? I'm frankly, this show's not political. We'll have people from all sides of the aisle and sharing their opinions, and that's okay. I tend to be a little bit more conservative, but I have a liberal bent on some things. And just long story short, though, I believe in science. And I believe that we can't keep going this direction that we're going in. And it's too bad that both the left and the right in our political discourse has taken something that we should all remember back in the day when, we argued about a tax cut or this or that, but there was a whole bunch of stuff we agreed on. Isn't this beyond emissions and becoming energy independent and just all of that? Isn't that something that should be apolitical or non-political for those of you in Rio Linda? Like, shouldn't it be apolitical? Shouldn't it be bipartisan? Shouldn't it be something that we can all agree on? It's just so sad that something that we all really need to be on board for our future, like we're fighting about it. Not you and I, but just people. Like, what in the world? I don't know what we can really do about that other than continuing shows like this and educating people and trying to get them to see that this is not a partisan issue beyond emissions, right?
Right. It's about vision. We've all worked with people, had people in our lives that are very short-sighted, and it's all about today. It's all about right now. It's all about that immediate response or gratification or something right in front of you. And then we've all known those people. And I'd venture to guess for most of us, it was one of our grandparents that we just thought, wow, they are so wise, or they have so much vision. There's so much information out there in the world, and there's it's totally unlike me, but there's a current song that really affected me quite a bit, and it's played on country radio, and I forget the artist name or who did it, but it's called "Buy Dirt," and it's about having the vision of making small choices that lead you to where you want to go. And it's about, somebody asking their grandfather to give them some advice, and his advice was buy dirt. And it sounds so simple, buy dirt. And it almost sounds silly, but the concept is, to be happy in life, buy a piece of land, find somebody to spend that time with, make a home, put down roots, that type of thing. Getting to a vision, but starting with that short step. And, beyond emissions is kind of like that, right? We've got all these decisions, we've got all these things that are right in front of us, but so many people only want to see what's right in front of them, right? They don't have the vision to look long term, and what a step now then leads to down the road to that vision of beyond emissions, as you mentioned before, and what our planet could be, what our lives could be, down the road, what our children's lives could be, our grandchildren's lives.
Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better. And we know better now. You know what I mean? I still see the post and respond to posts sometimes. I do it in a friendly fashion, so I'm not insulting anyone, because I'm sure they don't mean to be, ignorant or not knowing. Because, folks, again, ignorance means you think you know, but you actually don't. It doesn't mean you're stupid or dumb or anything like that. Just clarifying the English language for some folks. But, at the end of the day, I have to respond, though. And how I respond is this. The post is, something went wrong with EVs, or right now during peak demand, and now they're telling people they can't charge their EVs, but they're saying that by 2035 it's going to be all EVs. See, this isn't going to work. Or Texas, the grid went down, all because of renewables. See. It's like, wait a minute. Folks didn't have that attitude, at the beginning of the internal combustion engine. You're going to, the steam engine's working great. This is pathetic. It breaks down all the time. You have to take a mechanic with you everywhere you go. Like, that same person would have been posting that about the internal combustion engine. We're just beginning right now, folks. We don't have to be negative about every step that folks are taking. We need to reward these risk takers, correct?
Absolutely. You just really made my mind immediately went to start stop. It's one of the most beneficial technologies that has come out, I'm going to say, the past 20 years for our planet, for a beyond emissions world. Start stop. The fact that our internal combustion engines aren't running all the time whenever we're driving, right? Whenever we're stopped at a light, if it doesn't have to be running, it shuts off. That alone has impacted our world so much. And what's the one thing I used to hear all the time was, how do I turn this off? This is the worst thing ever. I can't believe, it does this. I want to figure out how to turn it off, so that I can feel that rumble under my seat all the time, things like that. Now, 2, 3, 4 years later, 5 years, this technology has been out for probably 6, 7 years, but probably 2 or 3 years really predominantly. And now people are like, yeah, it took me a little bit of getting used to, but now I don't even realize it's happening. And that's the type of vision to understand that, yeah, it's going to be disruptive. And Josh, I know across your career, you've always been the guy. You're okay with disruption because you know what's going to come at the end of a disruption.
Simon Sinek says we cannot be like Kodak. Okay, we cannot hang on to the digital camera patent and hide it so that we could have 10 years more sales of film and then totally destroy ourselves. Okay, what we need to do is we need to do like Steve Jobs, and we need to blow ourselves up. We need to disrupt ourselves. And watching a thing on Amazon and Jeff Bezos, where Jeff Bezos was recently, I just saw it on Vice, I think it was. And Jeff Bezos went to go have sushi with Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs said, hey, I want to show you something. Took him in a room and said, here's our iPod. So I know you enjoy, being very successful selling all your music and CDs. And it's not going to totally destroy you. You'll be the last one selling CDs. So Bezos goes back and he does exactly what Simon Sinek says to do, not what Kodak did. But he says we need to disrupt ourselves. And now we have Prime. Could you imagine not having all this access to Prime? I watched Thursday Night Football the other day on my Amazon channel, man. It's like, it's amazing. But that would not have happened if Bezos did what Kodak did. It happened because he disrupted himself instead of letting another company come in and put him in the grave. But that led to innovation. So I love disruption, to speak to that. How do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, my entire career, I got out of school. I've got degrees in business and chemical engineering and mathematics, as you know, and I've always been kind of, I knew pretty quickly after getting out of school, I knew I was never going to be the best engineer, and I knew I wasn't going to be the best business person, so I tried to find a merge of those two things. And the only thing that has gotten me through my career in an industry like batteries, which is where my day job is, right? In an industry like batteries, is always looking for what's new, always being open to that newness, but also understanding that not everything that's new is going to disrupt and innovate, that you have to be discerning still. just by seeing new technologies, hearing about new technologies, doesn't mean they're the technologies that are going to change the world, that are going to get us where we need to go. Because just because something is good and beneficial and gets us or could potentially get us to our vision doesn't mean it's going to get us to our vision. And I think that's the most difficult thing that we have in our beyond emissions world, Josh, because we have data at our fingertips. We have information at our fingertips now with the internet and phones and computers in the palm of our hand, that the smallest technology changes, some that may not even be disruptive, can be presented in ways that can make it more challenging for us to find the truly disruptive, truly innovative technologies.
And innovation leads to economic success, not just for the individual that takes the risk or the company or the inventor or what have you, but we all get to share in it. I don't know about you, but I enjoy turning my lights on in my house, and I enjoy having my Wi-Fi, and I enjoy, thank you, Tesla, Nikolai Tesla, right? Like we have to really just applaud these people, because their innovations, and sad that Tesla and his family never got to enjoy the fruits of that because of the broken deal with Westinghouse and other things, and the early deal broken with Edison. I mean, there were some royalties that he and their family never got paid, but darn it, the American people and the whole world have surely enjoyed the benefits of that innovation, right? Economics, let's shift gears. That innovation, sometimes disruption, sometimes not, can lead to economic booms that we can't even imagine right now, right?
Yeah, and that's a tough conversation to have when it comes to disruptive innovations and economics. Not everybody's going to be the new Amazon. In fact, Amazon wasn't always the new Amazon, right? There had to be lots of different pivots, lots of different decisions that were made along the way. I mean, it was a website selling books in the beginning, right?
They called it Amazon.bomb at the time of the .com bust. Yeah.
Yeah. And in today's world, we see new EVs being shoved down our throat all the time as the next greatest thing. And yet we're also being told all the time that just because you buy something that's emissions free, whether it's solar for your home, whether it's an electric vehicle, whatever it is, that you'll get tax breaks and you'll do this. I know a couple weeks ago, the incentive, the new $7,500 incentive was announced for a federal tax incentive for electric vehicles. And most electric vehicle manufacturers were able to raise their prices because of it. Why? Because many electric vehicle manufacturers are going to be making less margins, less money off of electric vehicles than they are off of internal combustion engine vehicles. But they also writing on the wall, right? That we need to move towards this environment. So we've got to start shifting towards this environment. That's a great economic discussion of the big bad corporations in this world who are saying, you know what, we need to shift to this, but we're going to make less money in the short term, but in the long term, it's the right thing to do. And we will be successful in the long term, even though we're going to be challenged in the short term.
I love what you always say. Jeremy Cordray with us, expert in energy, and of course shares the dream I have and you have. Thanks for tuning into this podcast called Beyond Emissions. I love how you say it, Jeremy. Beyond emissions does not mean zero emissions, does not mean 100% electrical vehicle. And go into that a little bit. We have a lot of different avenues that we can really head down, and hybrids, etc. Hydrogen fuel cell technology perfected up in space on the space station, ISS, for years, and many other ways. Like, this is really potentially, now that they're finding less expensive ways, very cheap ways to get that hydrogen gas extracted now through electrolysis from water, just a lot of different sources. I think hydrogen allows us to still have the power for our economy and where that power needs to be, but at the same time, doesn't put us in the all or nothing basket of electrical vehicles. Talk about your statement, beyond emissions or zero emissions. I think you've said before, emissions free future does not mean all electric. Talk a little bit about that.
It doesn't, but I do believe we are in the decade and probably until I'm gone, I'm 45. I hope to have another 40 plus years on this earth. But even if I've got a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, it's going to be the electric vehicle revolution in my lifetime, right? But that's not the end game, right? The reason why electric vehicles are so important as another phase is that we have the readily available technology and infrastructure for it. Now, I know we hear a lot about, the grid can't handle it if everybody tries to charge your car at the right time. One of the biggest challenges I think we're going to have is home charging. I think it's only 30% of American households actually park their vehicles inside their garage. And so you have all these challenges to it. But the couple of core things are there, right? Your propulsion motors and things like that. We've been doing a lot with electric outside of actual vehicles for a long time. So we have a lot of that core technology there. We have battery technology. Lithium batteries have been around since the 90s. Now, can they become better? Can they get better? Absolutely. But we've got all the right pieces. Do we have electric vehicle refilling abilities? That's our electric grid. Is it ready for everybody in America to be driving an EV? Absolutely not. But it's there. We can build it out. We're not starting from scratch. Right? It's readily accessible. When we talk about fuel cell, I love the concept of fuel cell because whenever we talk about fuel cell, we're talking about the back-end supply chain is limited on emissions as well. EVs, we're still building a lot of the components and things the same way. But you go back in and from a mining standpoint, for the raw materials, for the batteries that go into EVs and things like that, you still have all that dirty little secrets going on that are not emissions free, that are not good for our planet necessarily beyond it. But when you talk about fuel cells and you talk about the energy that's being stored in that hydrogen and oxygen that we're going to take advantage of, it starts getting you excited. Does a fuel cell electric vehicle, which we call FCEVs, the fuel cell electric vehicle, it still has batteries, doesn't have to have as many batteries, burns a whole lot cleaner in your whole carbon footprint piece of it. But where are we going to refill? Where's the hydrogen filling network? Where's all these other things that are out there? We've got to take a lot more time before we can get to that point. But the EVs are such an important step. It's not the end game. It's not the overall vision. It's what's right in front of us that we have to be able to see.
I see posts all the time. I agree with you, by the way. I agree with you 100%. 100%. And I see all the time for fuel cell technology, hydrogen fuel cell technology, that there are new ways to extract the hydrogen utilizing electrolysis instead of having to utilize hydrocarbon technology to extract it from, petrochemicals, et cetera. And now, because of these new breakthroughs, again, I see it on Facebook. Am I right? Am I wrong? I don't know. We all, like you said, we see posts all the time. Does it mean that's the bridge that's actually going to get us there? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But you're right as well. I'm excited. I see it and I'm wow. Okay, so we've now come up with a way to inexpensively harvest as much hydrogen gas as we need from regular H2O water. Okay, that's great. Interesting. Why in the world does a vehicle not have a left and a right system where the hydrogen's on one side and then And then instead of coming out the tailpipe, it dumps into a tank over here on the other side. And then as you're driving down the road, you have all the energy you need to continue the electrolysis process to take the hydrogen gas out of that, utilizing these new technologies that I'm describing. So that it seems like a perpetual energy situation where you're just tossing the ball back and forth. The energy never disappears. It's just changing forms, and you're able to use it on the in-between, etc. And I don't know why that isn't happening. I don't see how there would be a ton of losses. The only way I see that not being feasible is, if we didn't have an inexpensive way to extract the hydrogen to begin with. What are your thoughts about that?
So there's a couple of different things there from a science standpoint that are challenges. First off, a great pullback to our original conversation on a sum-zero equation. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only transfer forms. However, every time it transfers forms, you lose a little bit. One of the greatest things about hydrogen is it's one little electron, right? That's in its shell, right around the nucleus of that atom. We have one electron, and that valence shell only wants two electrons, which means it's able to hold an additional electron, right? And so these are what's beautiful about it. It's also what creates a lot of volatility. Anytime you have volatility in an electrochemical reaction, specifically, it's very difficult to control, more and more difficult to control. It's not that dissimilar. I have this discussion a lot with the difference. In fact, this coming week, I'm speaking at the EUEC conference and Charge Expo on this very subject called Is Lead the Bridge to Lithium? The difference between lead batteries that are in an internal combustion engine and lithium batteries on electric vehicle, there's not that much difference between them. The main difference is the volatility piece of it. Lithium is a lot more volatile. We see that with the different safety parameters that we have to have with lithium batteries over lead batteries and things like that. It's not that dissimilar whenever you talk about the volatility going from lithium over to that hydrogen fuel cell. And therefore, there's going to be challenges when you have that type of volatility and that energy piece of it to help control the piece of it. You're going to have loss. It's just keeping the losses under control. And that's the beauty that what you just talked about is the beauty of a FCS EV, a fuel cell electric vehicle, is that we can combine. So we've got EVs, right? We did internal combustion engines.
So you can account for the losses, basically, right? Is in this hybrid situation, in a sense.
Yeah, you're accounting for the losses through a buffer, which in most cases is a battery. So when you think of a hybrid, which is internal combustion and an EV together, you're accounting for the downside of one with the other. And then we went into straight EVs. Now, straight EVs have a dual architecture system. Every EV, electric vehicle that's out there, has a high voltage lithium battery and a low voltage lead acid battery. So you're accounting for each of the downsides. And you have a DC to DC converter and capacitors in there as well, which help for that. As we go into fuel cell EVs, and that's what you'll see is FCEVs, that term's going to be used a whole lot more as we develop fuel cell vehicles. You'll hear FCEV because you're going to pare back on your electric vehicle capabilities, improve your fuel cell abilities, and almost create a hybrid fuel cell electric vehicle. And then, what you described is a pure fuel cell, which I think is a long way off.
Right. Well, you would still have to have some sort of electricity or energy to control or initiate the electrolysis, the electrolysis aspect of it, of the extraction from the H2O. Apparently, they found a way to do this safely and cheaply, but still you have to, in other words, I would still see batteries as a part of a vehicle like that. So FCEV really does take the best of both worlds and account for the weaknesses of the other, right? And offset almost in a sense. We're not getting 100% efficient there. Again, beyond emissions is a dream. It may or may not ever come to 100% fruition. But darn it, this is a pretty great step in the right direction, man. FCEV. Wow.
So Josh, one of your gifts in life is passing along your passion to others. And you and I have had this discussion multiple times. You're a big proponent of education, especially in the youth of America, and finding a passion, turning it in, learning as much as you can about it. So I'm going to turn something on its ear. I'm going to one day, maybe somebody has listened to Beyond Emissions and they're saying, you know what? They brought up this idea or this concept that nobody, maybe we can make it. So here's the thing. So to this point, our vehicles in this world have been completely man-made. The way we did internal combustion engines, the way we do batteries, the way they do anything. Is there an ability to introduce some type of organic, some type of biological piece of this that can then take away some type of electrical, a man-made electrical beginning to this? Is there a way that with bioorganics the way they are? I mean, some of the fascinating things we're doing in the medical industry with biomaterials, Novomin. Novomin is a man-made polymer, synthetic, that allows us to strengthen and actually grow dentin on our teeth. Right? It's in Sensodyne and things like that. There's all these biomaterials that are out there where we can put things into our bodies to help them heal and then take them out, and they promote bone growth and all these other things. Is there something that we can do in vehicles to not have to require us, now that we get to fuel cells, is there a way for us to start this reaction, start things going from a biological standpoint and have to rely even less on man-made?
Why not look at the most efficient machine that God ever made, human beings? In other words, what a battery was first originally designed off of was connecting a positive and a negative on some dead tissue, and suddenly it didn't come to life or animate into like Frankenstein. But, it did shock, the senses in realizing, oh my gosh, the body itself is a battery. And that's actually how the plates, how was it Volta, Alexandra Volta that figured this out? I can't remember. Forgive me. I feel horrible because I know it. It's like I'm watching Jeopardy and like, I know it, darn it. Anyway. Well, I'll look it up later. But folks, I'm correct in that. The first battery was designed because we have those divisions. We have those divisions within our cell structure. And we have electrolyte. We have minerals flowing. We are electric beings, biological, chemical, electric beings. And the batteries we use today are all actually originally designed and inspired from the human body that God created. So yeah, right? I mean, literally, I could not eat anything and just drink some water for how many months before I would die? If you ran out of gas, you're not going anywhere, right? In a mechanical vehicle, but it just opens the mind to say, how could we look at the greatest invention ever? I guess that thinks a lot. It makes me, I believe we were made in God's image, and I believe in the Bible. So I'll go there. Yeah. The greatest thing that God ever created was us. And, that was the driving force, the inspiration in creating a battery. So yeah, we're literally giant batteries ourselves. So why not go back to the basics? Biological solutions. Those are actually things that aren't being discussed. I mean, except for here at Beyond Emissions with Jeremy Cordray, right, Jeremy?
There you go. You know, it's really exciting when you start thinking about opening up things that we've said, you know what, you've got to have this to do this. Well, what if we said, what if we didn't have to have that? How else could we do it? You know, that type of disruptive technology, I think we're going to see that come to fruition. Now, oftentimes, that type of vision is, and let's go back to economics a little bit. That type of vision oftentimes takes it takes a little bit of crazy. That's what I like to say, is that type of vision takes a little bit of crazy. And many times that little bit of crazy, or a lot of bit of crazy, sometimes can be misperceived in the economic markets quite a little bit. And I know Tesla and some of the other, Edison and some of those others, they had to have their Alexander Graham Bell and some of the other gentlemen in history who have been able to put that together, who could be the Steve Jobs to the Wozniak type of thing, where you can put it on. So know that there's probably a lot of technologies that are out there. You can read a lot of stuff on the internet nowadays, right? That hasn't been commercialized because it didn't have that commercial presence. Who knows what we've already come up with?
Right. We have the answers right here. We have it, and we're going to continue to have this discussion on an ongoing basis here at Beyond Emissions. Welcome to the podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's program. Hope you enjoyed the discussion, and I hope it opened your mind because that's what it's all about. If you open your mind, closed minds aren't going to get this. They've already made up their decision. But if you have an open mind and understand that a dream is something we may never fully actually attain, but making it our mission to get there beyond emissions can mean so much. I mean, what's the old saying? If you shoot for a star, you might hit an eagle. But, if you shoot for an eagle, you might hit a rock. What are you shooting for? We're shooting for beyond emissions. So we're going to run the gamut in what we discuss here. And I love that no subject is off limits, especially with you, Jeremy. Your passion is amazing as well. It's infectious. It is. And our audience and I are just blessed to have you here with us. We're not done completely yet. A few minutes left in the show. Wanted to talk a little bit about the education aspect of it. In order to discover, the next technology, or maybe you're an economic genius and you need to go find a little, someone with a little bit of crazy that has figured something out, and then help that person bring it to the market and do what some of the other investors in the past maybe have done. Oftentimes the person supplying, the gentleman or gal supplying the money, they have no clue how effective the technology can actually be, other than the potential economic return. But you have to have someone who is on both sides of the fence. A little bit of crazy in the investor, maybe, I don't know. But education, you mentioned your degrees in chemical or chemistry and in mathematics. I mean, kids who are listening, we've only got a few minutes left on the broadcast. And Jeremy, of course, I'll have you back again. So we're going to continue this discussion beyond emissions. But for the kids who are listening right now, this is their moment where we're able to tell them, we would love it if you would be a part of this, helping us to have beyond emissions as a reality, not just a dream. And to get there, though, it's not going to happen by just scrolling on your phone and hoping that you get emailed something. It does require investing in your own knowledge and your own education. And that doesn't have to be, although We recommend college, but that said, lots of geniuses never went to college, but they never stopped learning either. And in the world we live in today, whether it's education through higher education or really working your ass off and doing self-education, it's important to learn, learn, learn. So closing the show, especially for the kids that might be listening, let our audience know just how important education is so that you can actually have, some sort of fingerprint on this solution for your kids and grandkids as well. Talk a little bit about that.
Math. Math, math, math. Math is the basis of everything. Everything comes off of math. So I encourage everybody who has a disruptive and innovative bone that they want to spend a lifetime pursuing, math. Math is the beginning of it. It doesn't matter if you're good at it or not. Just learn as much as you can about math. Then the other piece of it is find people who are passionate. It is so important. It is so important for your health, for your longevity, for your happiness, to find passion. Some of us are fortunate enough to find it in our spouses. My wife of 22 years, I think I'm more passionate about her than she is about me sometimes, but sometimes we find it there. Sometimes we find it in our work. Sometimes we find it in being around other people. Sometimes we find it in not being around other people. But find what you're passionate about. Search out people who are just as passionate as you are about it. I'll never forget, some of the key people in batteries that I learned from early on in my career. A gentleman by the name of Kevin Burtness, Jim Klang, Frank Fleming. These are amazing battery people that I learned from. And they had a passion for batteries and solving batteries, working in batteries, which, in the early 2000s hadn't changed a whole lot in many, many decades. So find somebody you're passionate about that shares a passion. If they're passionate about it, they're going to share with you, and they're going to give you so much of their time sharing with your passion. But passion, let it drive all off the foundation of math, and the sky's the limit, Josh.
Right. And one last quote from Einstein: do not seek to be successful, but instead seek to be valuable. Right?
Absolutely. I can't tell you, I was one of those. I went to school, went to college, still didn't know what I wanted to do, started my first job out of college, still didn't know what I really wanted to do until I found batteries about 6 years after college, and I kind of stumbled into it. When you find your passion in life and you're able to add value to this world, and sometimes it's seen value, sometimes you just know your value that you're giving to the world. There's nothing else like it.
Right. And the other thing is, I said it before, I'm a believer in God, and the Bible says that what you do in secret, that is still doing the right thing when no one is looking, he rewards that. Okay? Some people call it the universe or whatever. I believe in the Bible. God rewards you for doing that hard thing in secret that no one else is seeing that you're doing. So be passionate. Absolutely. Jeremy, I'll have you back again, obviously. I love working with you. I love having you on the show, and you're a great friend. And of course, what mission are we on, bro?
Beyond a mission.
I love it. I'm going to be working on seeing if I can get some sort of Star Trek thing permission for that. I'm a Trekkie nerd. So I thank you so much, man. And hang on the line for our engineers. Oh, real quick, let our listeners know how they can contact you and get in touch with you, Jeremy.
Best place to do that is on LinkedIn. I'm in my mid-40s, so I don't do the whole Instagram and other technology stuff or Snapchat or whatever that stuff is. On LinkedIn, look me up. First name Jeremy, last name Cordray, Cordray. You'll find lots of different posts on new technologies there, mostly focused on the transportation marketplace. But feel free to follow me. And if you're ever interested or you're looking for somebody to share their passion about energy with you, all you have to do is reach out. I'm always willing.
Excellent. Jeremy Cordray, my friend and a mentor as well to me. I appreciate you very much. Hang on the line, brother. Beyond Emissions. That is our mission. That is our dream. It's a podcast, but it's also a conversation with experts from around the world in a myriad of different technologies that are going to get us there. All right. Gonna end the program on Simon Sinek's Start with Why principle. Okay. It starts, normally you start with the what. The what is someday we're going to go ahead and maybe have everything cleaned up, what have you, the how, and then the why. All right. Well, Simon Sinek does this in reverse. Start with the why. Okay. Our why is we want to live in a clean world where we can breathe, where it's efficient, where the economy is humming along because there's unlimited clean energy. We have so much more ability to create more innovations and have other economic successes in our lives that aren't drowned out by the sound and hum of a motor, for example. I mean, anyway, that's literally, we could have a better life, a better world, and I think less war. I mean, oftentimes it's resources that people are actually fighting over. So, Beyond Emissions is not just about the blue sky and the clean air. There's so much connected to it. That's the why. The how is how are we going to do it? We'll have experts on from around the world talking about different technologies of how we can get to Beyond Emissions. And also as well, the what. We'll enjoy the fruits of our labor, or our kids and grandkids will. And we may never actually totally get there to 100% Beyond Emissions. But darn it, it's our dream to do so. And we thank you for joining us on this journey. I'm Josh Brum, your host, Beyond Emissions Podcast. Have a great day.